Of course, because it's a 60-minute enduro. Let's join Alan and Daz for the Group E GT production race.
Yeah, thank you, Kenny. Well, this should be a very interesting race, actually. The only time we see these cars in full anger, I guess, has been the 12-hour race at Bathurst. But there's a lot of interesting cars out here. The Mazda RX-7s have been the car over the last couple of years, a very big field here, and of course a 60-minute race, so you really do have to work out your tactics properly here. I don't think there'll be too much hammer and tong first up, but that first chicane and the left-hand corner are going to be pretty interesting. As you can see, a good smattering of cars with the Porsches and also the RX-7s. Ford Lasers is a great, you'll see the Toyota Corolla GTIs, Toyota MR2, the Holden Commodore, Nissan Pulsar. There's a terrific variation of cars in this race. Celica Group A rally car, that should be pretty quick around here. The Mazda 626, so a lot of cars that people at home can identify with, cars that you drive to and from work and around town. The Peugeot 405 416 is another interesting car here. The Subaru Impreza, great rally car. We'll see how it goes on the hard stuff. And the two Porsche 968 CSs there, very, very quick cars. Alan, as I said, these are cars that people can identify with. They're cars that are sold off the showroom floor, and this should be a pretty interesting race.
Yeah, it does. It has a lot of relevance because I think a lot of people like to see this type of racing because, as you say, the majority of these cars you can actually walk in and buy them off the showroom, so people can really relate to them.
Well, we've got a green flag here, but Alan, I've noticed there's no Mazdas lining up there, and they have been incredibly quick.
Well, there's the Slick 50 car, but the works cars are at the back of the grid, and I'm not real sure, to be honest, why that is the case. Maybe they're just going to make it more interesting and come through.
Well, that is going to make it interesting, let me tell you, because they've got a lot of traffic to get through.
Yeah, they're bringing up the rear of the grid, so they're going very slowly at the moment. But Neville Crichton in the Tico M3 is... Oh, that's a bit early in the day for that nonsense.
Bit of grass cutting already?
Maybe he's just practicing after the start, a bit of an advantage. Now that he knows he can get away with it, he might do it.
Derek, pretty interesting situation with these cars, production cars. We see them go around the very famous circuit of Mount Panorama here in Australia in a 12-hour race, and it's turned out to be a really interesting affair. I mean, you see that Honda NSX there, a very exotic car, but hasn't had a lot of success in this racing. It's been the Mazda RX-7s have been the cars to beat.
And of course they say variety is the spice of life, and just look down the straight here and see all the different manufacturers that you have involved here. And although this is cheap and cheerful type of racing, often this can be the most fun because, Alan, these slip and slide and buck and bounce all over the place. Oh, they're absolutely hilarious to watch.
Well, they're good to drive too. I mean, I drove the RX-7 in the Bathurst 12-hour a couple of years ago, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. They're real good stuff. But I noticed that the works Mazdas aren't doing the warm-up. They've actually come onto the grid, and they're just sitting there. There they are, and they're not bothering to do the warm-up. So whether there's just further tactics by Alan Horsley, who's the very successful team manager for the Mazda team, he's probably playing one of his mind games or something.
He's had a lot of success since he took over the Mazda racing here in Australia.
Well, Daz, I mean, he's got a 100% record. I mean, everything he goes in, he wins, and he really does prepare these cars beautifully. They do use a lot of students out of TAFE colleges to prepare them, to their credit, and they just come through every time.
Derek, it's a great organisation here, the TAFE College. Every year, of course, when the Group A cars go to Bathurst, there's invariably a lot of damage, and these kids are all apprentices, and they put the cars back together again, do a tremendous job, and actually keep them racing. In fact, the Honda NSX that's in this field was crashed very heavily by Wayne Gardner, and they basically rebuilt the car overnight, and he was allowed to run, and it was a big shunt.
Sounds like a great way to motivate some young people. And of course, if they think they're working on a racing car, which is essentially what these are, there's the NSX right there. Although it's a production car, they are racing cars when you put these numbers and all these stickers on it, and that of course motivates people to do a good job because well-prepared racing cars have a habit of being successful.
Well, 60 minutes of racing around here. It's a lot of concentrations, and I mean, these cars are going to move around, they're going to slide around a bit. They certainly aren't as precise as the Group A cars. So the Mazdas were late on the grid, and they have missed the warm-up lap. Well, we knew that. I'm not quite sure why. That's obviously the why, because they're late, is it?
So that looks like a penalty that's being assessed on the Mazda cars. They were actually late here, so that...
Well, I don't think it's going to result in too much of a penalty. It's a 1 hour race. They're already at the front of the grid. You know, what else can they do?
Having a look at Johnny Bow sitting on pole. Geez, had a terrific season so far, AJ. You've been doing a fair bit of chasing with him.
Yeah, too good. He's really got that Dick Johnson Falcon flying, and we've got a lot of work to try and catch up with him. He's having an excellent year.
Walden. Rooklyn is there. Warwick Rooklyn, one of our commentators for the day. Now Warwick doesn't get a chance to race these days that often, and when he does race, he usually performs very, very well.
This will be an interesting in-car shot if we get to see that, particularly in the early apps, because when these cars bounce over these curbs, they really move around a tremendous amount, and it's hilarious to watch it, and it's actually quite amusing, Alan, as you know, to race following stuff like this and bouncing over the curbs.
Well, you can certainly take a lot more liberties on the curbs with these, because they've got a lot more suspension travel than a car that's been highly modified. So yeah, you can bounce them all over the place.
It's interesting, Johnny Bow and Gary Walden together. Gary Walden's another driver that just occasionally gets a run, and by G always goes well. Green light, so we're racing now.
Great start by Bowie.
The two Mazdas get off the line pretty well. The field streaming through. Now this is going to be really interesting as they come into the first chicane. A big mover there coming down the inside, trying to pick up that car for you. But really made up about 4 or 5 spots off the starting position. The Mazda's through okay.
Shocking start by Neville Crichton. He was actually third on the grid. It looked like he might have missed a change or not had enough revs on, but he's way back now in about 7th or 8th place. 9th.
Did you hear that noise from the in-car camera? Bash, bash as he went through the chicane. Somebody's obviously sideswiped him as he went through that chicane.
Now these cars, the biggest problem is going to be brakes.
Well, yeah, obviously they don't enjoy the modifications that an out-and-out race car. But having said that, of course, they can modify their brakes in the interest of safety. So these cars have done 12 hours at Bathurst, but certainly they will have to watch the brakes towards the end of this run.
So the car's now streaming around onto the back straight, and they'll make their way up along the beachfront of Surfers Paradise here. The two RX-7s just opening up a little gap as expected. But as we said, there's a long way to go here, and to hold your concentration for 60 minutes here in the traffic is not going to be an easy task. The Honda looks beautiful on the road, that car.
It's a quick car. I mean, it had a major shunt at Bathurst. I mean, it only climbed over the wall and ended up down the cliff, but they did a great job, and of course it's been well and truly rebuilt properly since then, but it's a quick car.
The success of the Mazda RX-7 in this form of racing, it doesn't surprise you. You've driven them, and what is their strength?
Well, they're just a good all-round package. They're very aerodynamic, they're light, they've got excellent brakes, they've got a good gearbox, and of course, not least, but they've got plenty of punch in the old engine department. So they're an excellent package, and Alan Horsley prepares them just so well.
Alan Grice driving well. Alan Grice, of course, a politician these days, as well as a part-time race driver and a commentator. He's been working with us today.
Well, if he's got any blues, he can pass legislation or something here, because this is his seat, I think.
It sure is. He was always spectacular around here in a NASCAR. There was no doubt about that. He really did own the place as far as the NASCAR went.
Oh, bit of a slide there coming out of the left-hand onto the straight.
Historically, Alan, these Mazda RX-7s 15 years ago were good production racing cars.
Yeah, and they just keep getting better, because I know that Alan's got a few tricks up his sleeve. They have a more sophisticated, more powerful version that they can bring in. So yeah, they're ready to meet any increased competition that will come their way. Actually, I think it was Gricey that did the blinding start to start with. I said it was Bowie, but I think it was Gricey. But of course now Bowie's got in front.
Gary Walden doing a great job out in front in the black car. Gary Walden is driving that car. We had another lineup here, AJ. That's what's confused us, but we've got that sorted out now. And Gary Walden's leading at the moment from Johnny Bow. But Walden's an amazing driver too. I mean, every now and then he just gets involved with a long-distance event, and invariably either wins it or places in the top 3.
Well, I actually co-drove with him the year that we won the 12-hour at Bathurst, and I tell you what, he's so smooth and so quick. He's very underestimated as a driver, and he's exactly the sort of driver. Oh, here we go, another shortcut. Gained a place, that can't be bad. he's just the perfect driver for this sort of event because he really does look after the equipment. He does nice, clean gear changes. He brakes the car nice and gently. So he really is a team manager's dream as far as having a driver to keep the car together in a long-distance event.
So the lineup for you now is Gary Walden in car number 9. He's out in front from Johnny Bow. Warwick Brooklyn is in 3rd place, driving very well at the moment. Johnny Burke, another interesting car there. That's the Subaru Impreza. And I was talking to Johnny Burke. Both Burke and Walden come from the Central Coast, an area that I live in, and see each other pretty regularly. And Johnny Burke was saying that the Subaru was a really good car for this class of racing, that it had a nice power to weight ratio. The braking of the car was very good, and he thought the car would do exceptionally well.
Well, particularly around here because it's a very nimble, agile little car. And, of course, around here with the tight, twisty corners, compared to the Porsche, for instance, which is a slightly bigger car, rear-wheel drive, yes, and in fact, if it rained, the little Subaru would be real hard to catch.
Do we know, is there a penalty for running across the grass like we just saw? Because
well, like, if it is, half the field will be disqualified so far.
it looked like an easy way to make a pass there. In fact, they've actually changed the racetrack design from last year. See the straight-on run there? Last year they had curbing, which actually launched the Indy cars in particular. Now they're taking the curbing away, which is a much better idea. When the guys do get in trouble, they just simply go across the grass without too much damage.
Couldn't agree more.
Warwick Brooklyn and the Porsche looking nice and neat through that part of the circuit. They're going to spread out. Of course, they're going to run into traffic pretty early here. So tactics are going to play a big part, AJ. And I mean, I think if anything, the Mazdas really have got their act planned so well. I mean, they've had so much success in this style of racing.
Well, the thing in this type of racing, if you've got a little bit of an advantage, you really do try and use it. You pull out a bit of a lead, and then you come back a little bit by looking after your brakes and your gearbox and just keeping a little bit up your sleeve. And I think Mazdas are just doing that.
Gary Walden makes his way down the back straight again. You can see now he has opened up a little bit of a gap. There's the second of the Mazda RX-7s coming through now, but he certainly has opened up a gap over Johnny Bow. And Johnny Bow's not the sort of bloke that likes to drop back too far from the lead. Warwick Brooklyn, John Burke, Norris and Palmer, they're the top runners at the moment.
And sometimes when you look at cars like this, it looks as if they drive them easy. But if you listen carefully, the tires squeal and they jump on the brakes and the tires squeal. I mean, they drive these absolutely on the limit of adhesion, particularly here, they bounce over the curves.
Okay, so as they bounce over the curves, we'll bounce away for a few seconds and back shortly. Back on the streets of Service Paradise now, and the little Mazda RX-7 making his way around, and he'll blast his way back onto that back straight very, very shortly. Now, of course, in this race, Alan, they have to make a compulsory driver stop, so that's going to, you really have to pace yourself pretty well. If you can build the lead up, then that's going to help.
Yeah, and that's why it's all very important to have two drivers that are lapping fairly consistently and close to one, because you really don't want to build up a big lead, hand over to a guy who's going to lap 2 seconds lap slower than you.
We'll go to the pit side. Timmy Sheridan talking with Alan Grice.
Alan, the sort of car you get from Terry as the first change, what are the sort of things he has to look after in those first 20 minutes to make you happy with it?
Well, he's got to look after the brakes because these are basically standard cars, although we run a very good brake material. If you really go 10-10 under brakes, you'd run out very quickly around here. You would get fade. So he's got to maintain a good lap time. He's got to look after the brakes. He's also got to keep the revs down a bit because being the RX-7 is a twin turbo chargers, and round here in this lovely Queensland temperature, the cars can get very hot. So he's got to keep the revs down to keep the temperature down and keep the brakes alive. So it's a different type of racing, but there's a lot of tactics involved.
So as a driver, when is it best to get the car?
When's it best to get in the car? Oh, it's a bit good to win in the car.
The last one, eh? Okay, Alan, thanks a lot and good luck.
Alan Grice, of course, as we said, so fast around here in a NASCAR. We'll have a look at him in a Mazda a little bit later on. Now, there has been some confusion. Over the entry lesson, there we go. Car 22 has a real big lose as he comes through. And that's Ron Searle, the Gwenda Searle car. So, quite sure who's in it, but coming up very shortly. We'll have another look at it. Here we go. AJ.
There he is in the middle, turning in, and the back just breaking away at him. Mid-engine car, that too, so a little harder to do that in that type of car than what you'd expect in a total rear-engine car, because it's probably a very well-balanced little car, that MR2 Toyota.
That's Wendersearle driving, having a little lose there. Now, let's just come back to the entry list, because unfortunately we were supplied a list of names and numbers, and that hasn't been the case. We were calling Johnny Bow in the car. It's not. It's Terry Bosenjack, and he was a late starter to come into this team.
Yeah, Terry actually runs his own RX-7, and he's quite a good driver, very good driver, and he was actually called into the team to replace the late Greg Hansford in this event, and he's doing everybody very proud.
Well, it's been a bit of chaos, because the driver lineup we had originally for the changes was certainly changed around. We weren't given the information, so it was a bit confusing trying to work out who was who for a while. So that's the Bosenjack car. Of course, Alan Grice will be sharing that ride, and up front Gary Walden leading in the black car, and John Bow will also join him in that car. It's Walden, car 9. Johnny Bow will be the other. That's a pretty strong team at Bow and Walden.
Very, very strong. And, you know, Gary's probably just doing his own pace. He's probably very comfortable at the lap times he has to achieve. And they're probably running to a program, I've no doubt about that.
Well, AJ's got to be one of the best organised long-distance racers in Australia, because, I mean, he does so well in these events. He just must have a temperament that he can set that consistent pace and save the car at the same time.
He's also been instrumental in a lot of the development work on the RX-7. He works with Alan Horsley, and I know Alan thinks very highly of him as a test driver, and also as a very good, reliable driver that doesn't make too many mistakes. And of course, as I said before, that's exactly what you need for these long distance events.
I'd like to have a look at car 12 when we can. Johnny Burke in the Subaru Impreza, because that's been going extremely well, and as I said, he was very, very excited about it at the start of the season, and he had high hopes for this car, and I know that there's a lot of development to come out of it yet. Well, it's time for the feature race of the day. The Tui's Canterbury Guineas over 1900 metres is coming up shortly, so race fans stand by for that. But at the moment, we're looking at a race of a different kind. Here are the two Porsches together, Warwick Brooklyn, Peter Fitzgerald. They'll be a good dice. Fitzgerald also incredibly talented with long distance races. I think Warwick Brooklyn's done an outstanding job in the time that he's been called back to be able to drive the car. He's only actually done about 3.5 laps of practice, so he didn't know the circuit, he didn't know the car, and he's doing a great job. Okay, as I promised you, the Tui's Canterbury Guineas over 1900 metres with the tape rundown. Here's Kenny Callender.
Yeah, thanks, Dale.
Black RX-7. Now, there has been a bit of drama, because Terry Bosenjack, who was running second to this car in the silver RX-7, you'll notice there's quite a bit of damage on the driver's side, and this is the reason why. Ian Green in the Euro racing car just came in and bang, that was a pretty heavy hit.
Well, I don't know what to say about that. I think Ian Green looked like he was a bit asleep. The thing is, in these long distance races, you have to be painfully aware that you are going to be lapping slower cars, and you really have got to take your time. Here we go now. Look, he's coming in on the outside. Yeah, look, who would you apportion the blame to there, Derek?
Look how hard he hits the tyres, though. He just smacks into the tyres. A lot of damage if he can keep this shot as the car turns to the right side. Yeah. Lots and lots of damage. I would say you apportion the blame to that black car down the inside, because he had no business trying to race the leading car into the apex of that corner.
And also, if he would have been looking in his mirror, he could have actually eased off a little bit and let the guy go through. Yeah. That's what he should have done.
That was the Nissan Pulsar Triple S of Ian Green. Okay, we'll take a break, come back shortly. Bow, Walden, RX-7 out in front from Fitzgerald and Richards in second place. Peters and Rooklyn there in third place. Now here's the first of the changes coming up. Compulsory driver change, bit of bodywork flying off that car as well. Badly damaged. I was surprised the door opened up so well. Let's see if they, yes, closes okay. So the damage at this stage obviously hasn't upset it too much.
No, but I wonder who owns that car. The driver that just got in or the driver that just got out? Or was he standing in the pit lane?
Well, if it was the driver that just got in, he'd be dragging the driver that just got out, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
Alan Grice should be behind the wheel now. That should be Gricey back on the stretch of surface paradise, and that'll keep a lot of people happy here. This guy is really an aggressive racer. Derek used to race Group A here. in Australia for a long time, and there's the Slick 50 car. We'll come back to that in a moment because he's done a bit of grass cutting too. The McLeod's entries, gee whiz, they've been in Mazdas for a long time. They pioneered Mazdas, AJ, in this country.
Yeah, he was racing Mazda RX-7s when Alan Moffat was running them. He's been faithful to that brand for a decade.
Yeah, but getting back to Alan Grice, he's a big crowd favourite here, Derek. He'll throw this thing around the damaged Mazda, don't worry about that. But out in front, it's the Walden car with Bow.
I'm going to be interesting to see if the Walden car comes in the next couple of laps. Now, Alan may be playing this so because Bosenjak didn't spend a great deal of time in that car. He's made a very early pit stop. Now, whether Alan's decided to start one car with less fuel in it, and that's probably why he got away that little bit easier, because they had a lighter fuel load, and he's come in and made an earlier pit stop, and he's running the black car with a heavier fuel load to start with, which will make a later pit stop. So this is where the strategy comes into this long distance racing. It's very important.
Well, not only that, I mean, they've had so much practice in doing it. They really are well set up, and their Bathurst wins behind them. Gary Walden's done a great job. You watch the difference of when he's going through traffic. He just picks the moment to go through. He's really clean with the way he makes the manoeuvres. If he can't go through in a corner, he'll just hang back. And I saw him pass 3 or 4 cars a moment ago, and there was no fuss about it. It was just, now's the time, here I go.
The problem with passing these cars is you don't know who drives them, so you don't have confidence in the people you're passing. You actually have to be very careful to position your own car well away from their cars.
Or alternatively, you do know them, and that's why you're very cautious about passing them.
Jeremy Norris, Chris Stannard in the Porsche 968. That's the white car with the Italian green and red stripes. There's the Slick 50 car. As I said, gee, they've been involved for a long time. Came out of racing for a while and brought the car back. It's good to see them back in the clouds. They've been very strong supporters of the marque. So Jeremy Norris driving the car at the moment. He'll hand over to Chris Stannard on their driver change. And in the McLeod car, it's Peter McLeod at the moment. He'll hand over to Ray McLeod.
Every time I see that Slick 50 on the front, the O looks like the big headlight. I see the O on the 50 there. It always looks like the big headlight showing on the thing. But very well prepared car, and what they don't know about Mazda RX-7s, really, you wouldn't want to know. They've been running them rotary engine cars for years.
Of course, you just got a glimpse, and there it is there, the beautiful Honda, the NSX. Rossi Palmer at the wheel at the moment. He'll handle over to John Cowley, but a superb-looking motor car, just beautiful.
John Cowley is a member of the Indy board and very keen and enthusiast, and it's great to see him here having a run.
So McLeod's just starting to get a little bit ahead now of Jeremy Norris in the Porsche 968. And all of the cars will come in and make a driver change. No tyre changes, no fuel top-ups. It's just a quick driver change. And as we said already, one tactical move where Alan Grice has taken over from Terry Bosenjak. He damaged the silver RX-7 in a little prank, and Grice is out on the circuit at the moment.
NSX coming into the pits, looks like to be coming in fairly slow. It looks, I don't think there's a speed limit for these cars in that pit area. It looks to be coming in slow, Derek, doesn't it, if it's a normal pit stop?
A nice gentlemanly pit stop. Turns the indicator on the left-hand side there. Well, it looks as if it's going to be a normal driver change.
Came in very carefully. It's a beautiful looking car, isn't it?
Very strong car too. When Wayne Gardner crashed it at Bathurst, the people that fixed it just could not believe how strong it was.
Neck brace on there.
Yeah, well, the G-force in these things are enormous.
Both drivers are wearing the neck brace. If you could have seen the look on Elton Jones's face when he said that.
No, I guess really I'm being a bit flippant, because they're not a bad idea. If you, particularly on a street circuit like this, if you were to go into the wall sideways or backwards, it is going to, look after the old neck a bit better than if you didn't have them.
Well, the meshing's there for exactly the same reason, to keep you inside the car, so no arms are flailing out. If you do hit the wall, down it goes.
Obviously, I haven't seen much of this production car racing here, but how close to production cars are they? Do they have racing tires? Shock absorbers changed?
No, you can alter your shock absorbers. You can modify your brakes in the interest of safety. You must run a treaded tyre. You're not allowed to run slicks. They do run a tyre which they buff down, which will be the next best thing to a slick. but they're about as close as a true production car as you can get.
One of the real supercars of the world is the Honda NSX. Beautiful looking car. So, as Palmer now, he's changed over. They've changed their team round. There's Walden coming in yet to have a driver change. We'll take a break. Come back shortly to the streets of Surfers Paradise.